All right, let's dive into something that's both fascinating and a little uncomfortable to think about. How do you really know if your partner would choose you again? I mean, you could just ask them, right? But here's the thing, and this is where it gets interesting. Asking directly often gives you more of a reassurance than a real answer. Personally, I think what makes this really intriguing is how people are wired to avoid conflict, especially in emotionally charged moments. So, when you ask, would you choose me again? The response is usually less about truth and more about keeping the peace. What many people don't realize is that the real answer isn't in what they say, but in how they act. And that's where things get truly revealing. From my perspective, the key to understanding commitment isn't in grand gestures or verbal affirmations, it's in the small, everyday behaviors. Researchers have found that commitment is less about a stored decision and more about ongoing actions. How your partner allocates their attention, interprets your motives, and describes your relationship to others, these are the things that matter. One thing that immediately stands out is how these behaviors are largely unconscious, which makes them harder to fake. It's like, if you take a step back and think about it, the way someone treats you when they're not trying to impress you says a lot more than any words ever could. Let's break this down. The first sign is curiosity, not the intense, early relationship kind, but the subtle, ongoing kind. What makes this really interesting is how it ties into the self-expansion model. This model suggests that people are drawn to relationships that help them grow, that introduce them to new perspectives and experiences. But here's the catch. As partners feel like they've fully mapped each other's inner worlds, that growth slows down. What this really suggests is that continued curiosity isn't just nice to have, it's a structural feature of a thriving relationship. When your partner still asks you questions they don't know the answer to, it's a sign they see you as someone who's still evolving, still worth exploring. That's huge. The second sign is how your partner talks about you when you're not around. This raises a deeper question. Are they charitable in their interpretation of your actions, or do they assign blame? Research from the Gottman Institute shows that stable partners tend to narrate their shared history in a way that's kind and contextual. They don't itemize failures, they frame challenges as something faced together. A detail I find fascinating is how this ties into positive sentiment override, the tendency to interpret ambiguous behavior in a benign way. If your partner defaults to seeing the best in you, even when you're late or make a mistake, it's a sign their internal record of you is overwhelmingly positive. That's not just commitment, that's deep, enduring regard. The third sign is responsiveness, especially in the unremarkable moments. Gottman's research on bids for connection highlights how small, low-stakes interactions predict relationship stability. What makes this really interesting is how it's not about big, dramatic gestures, but about consistent, everyday choices. When your partner turns toward your bids for attention, whether it's a comment about the news or an invitation for a walk, they're signaling that your attention matters to them. This raises a deeper question. How often do we overlook these tiny moments as insignificant? But if you take a step back and think about it, it's in these moments that responsiveness is demonstrated most authentically. What these three signs share is a focus on attention, how your partner allocates it to you, both in the present and in their memory of the past. Curiosity is about future attention, charitable interpretation is about past attention, and responsiveness is about attention in the now. Personally, I think what's most compelling here is how these behaviors are bidirectional. When one partner is responsive, the other tends to become more responsive too. It's a self-reinforcing loop, which means that even if things feel off, small shifts in behavior can create big changes over time. Here's the takeaway. Being chosen again isn't a verdict waiting to be discovered. It's a pattern of behaviors that you can both influence and observe. If you're wondering whether your relationship is thriving, don't just listen to what your partner says. Watch how they act, how they talk about you, and how they respond to you in the smallest moments. That's where the truth lies. And if you're looking for a deeper dive, I'd encourage you to check out the Thriving Relationship Test. It's a science-inspired tool that can give you even more insight. But honestly, the most powerful insight might just come from paying closer attention to the everyday behaviors right in front of you. What do you think? Are there moments in your relationship that stand out as signs of true commitment? Let's talk about it in the comments.